Hello, and welcome to Required Reading, the podcast that revisits the most impactful books from our childhood. I'm your host, Erin Bowles. I'm a writer, actor, and comedian. And our guest today is Tocarra Elise. Tocarra is a comedian, writer, and kid lit enthusiast based in New York City. She is most known for her viral social media recaps of beloved children's books. They're fantastic. And her work as a writer on the Emmy-nominated show, The Problem with Jon Stewart. A job she was offered after submitting a blind packet. You can see Tocarra performing stand-up all over NYC. She is currently working on the second season of the critically acclaimed and wonderful Getty Museum Family and Kids podcast, If Objects Could Talk. Hello!
Hey, Erin, thanks for having me. This is so cool.
Oh my goodness. When I first learned about you, I was like, this is the person. This is the person who must come on this podcast. I first learned about you on Chelsea Devantez's podcast, Glamorous Trash, and you did a wonderful episode about Josephine Baker's memoir on there. I don't know Chelsea, but that podcast is very impactful to me and very inspirational in sort of how I structured this podcast. And then I find out you have this huge platform talking about specifically children's books.
Yes, I
And
do,
so
yeah.
all of the elements combine. I was following you for a while, and then right around New Year's, you posted saying, I can come on, I'm ready for podcasts and these, to talk about one of your favorite topics, revenge.
Yes.
And so I said, where did this all come from? Where did this all start? And you said, let's read The Count of Monte Cristo by
I absolutely
Alexandre
did.
Dumas.
I absolutely did.
We were talking just before we logged on. This book is delicious and juicy. It's long, but I think it's very well paced. I think it's really fun. It came out from 1844 to 1846, serialized in the newspaper, the Journal des Débats, Journal of Debates, for about a year and a half. And you can absolutely feel it, and I know the citizens of France were on their edge of their seat every day waiting to read this because it is just so juicy. This is the story of a man who was wrongfully imprisoned for 14 years and the following 15 years after he escapes, getting revenge on the three men who put him there.
That's right.
What is your story with this book? How did it come into your life?
What a fantastic question. I'm not going to blame my mother. It wasn't her fault. I was pretty much reading whatever I wanted to from a very early age. She wasn't checking the library card receipts. And so I actually checked out this book when I was in fifth grade. Mind you, it wasn't the a full adult version. This was like an abridged kids version called Great Illustrated Classics. So not only was it, like basically the main plot points of the story, but it had great illustrations. So as I was going through it this time around, I'm like picturing these beautiful pen and ink drawings of like men in caves, and it was brilliant. But I read this when I read the book. I was like, this is fantastic. As someone who was, not the most popular kid in school, always had dreams of like showing people, you watch me, I'm gonna make it. There was just something about Edmond Dantes' story that was just so delicious. And just the patience. Like, what did you say? Like 14 years in prison and then another 10,
Yes.
15 years, like just amassing all this wealth and connections and building his own home and then finally letting loose his plan was just amazing. And so you're absolutely right. At the top of the year, I was a little I'm not gonna say crazy. That's not cool. I was daring, and I talked a lot about revenge and wanting to get revenge. And so I actually had been revisiting a lot of revenge classics,
Oh.
the Kill Bills and the Count of Monte Cristos and all these, all the great revenge literature. Because a question that kept popping up into my mind was, how do I make this anger useful to me, right? How do I push past these feelings of resentment and frustration and like sort of poisoning myself, and how do I make these feelings useful? And as I was thinking about that, I immediately thought about the main character of this book, our Edmond Dantes, aka Count of Monte Cristo, who absolutely was letting anger and frustration eat him alive, and then really decided to use those feelings and get
Yeah.
revenge. A little heroic, a little not a hero, made some questionable choices throughout this very, very long book. But overall, I gotta say, he's kind of an inspiration.
I finished the audiobook and we were both listening to the audiobook. I don't know if it's the same one, but the guy who narrated mine is named Bill Homewood. That guy did an
Yes.
amazing job. That guy did a great job.
He was locked in.
The voices. So I wanted to give him a shout out, and I think I was the kid in French class who really was an asshole on the pushing the accent. And really saying things the right way. So there's a chance I'll be, pronouncing Mercedes as Mercedes. Because he does it in such a delicious way.
He really does. That's so funny. So shout out to you. I don't have a background in French. I was flying by the seat of my pants when I was reading this as a kid. I was like, what? D'Anglaire? Villefort?
I know. I never read this until now, and I'm so glad I did. I can't wait to get my hands on a physical copy. The only sort of context I had for it was guy gets imprisoned. Like I knew some of the big like visuals, but all I knew is that this one girl who was sort of like a frenemy in middle school always had a copy of just the thickest book possible. And it was very clearly like, y'all see me reading this? Y'all see how
Right.
I'm reading Dumas. And and there's something also like within that like gels somehow with the book. But it was so fun, and I finished it just a couple hours ago. And in the final chapters, he's sort of questioning himself of like, did I do the right thing?
Yeah.
And the whole time I was like, yeah, sir, yes, you did the right thing. And every time, as soon as he gets out of prison and he does this incredible daring, like there's so much adventure and gossip, twists and turns. As soon as he gets out, he goes to his old boss.
That's right.
And secretly, like under a disguise, pays off all of this boss's debts that he's incurred over the last 14 years. And some extra. And he is just giving away literal jewels. And so to me, I was like, oh, this is revenge mingled with incredible generosity.
Yes.
Which is, I think, the perfect blend, perhaps. The perfect blend.
I would say so too. And a lot of style. I love the descriptions of his clothing and the place where he lives. So not only do we have this great revenge story, but it's like he also lived well and he dressed well and he cared about himself. This is a man of, a man of means now. So I love that.
He had principles, and he's imprisoned, and after a couple of years it's that SNL bit of this club has everything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
this man is like digging a tunnel in a jail cell. He connects with this religious man who teaches him so many languages and histories, and they create this beautiful, incredible bond. So when he comes out, he's able to carry himself as a very learned, worldly man. He also temporarily pretends to be an Englishman. And I was like, were you also in there practicing accents? Where did that come from? And there's something that Dumas does that it is so inconsequential, but there are these little moments where he's like, and he laughed with that English laugh, and he walked with that quintessential English walk. I was like, what's going on there?
Yes. I was like, I'm reading this. I'm like, okay, this is a French book in the French language. He's like, oh, this English walk. I'm like, this has to low-key be an insult.
Yes.
Right? This cannot be,
What's going on?
I'm like, did the French people of the day like read this and be like, clock it? Like he's
not wrong.
Yeah. Not wrong. Yes, he's a little lowbrow now.
Yes.
With that English walk and English laugh.
I started reading it and I got intimidated because I was like, oh, I don't have the understanding of French history and the French Revolution. And for Americans who don't know this, the French Revolution, it's revolutions. It lasted for about 80 years of like revolution. Oh, we went too far. Let's get a king back. Now let's do Napoleon. Oh, that was a little bit much. And Dumas, when he is about, I guess, my age. She's about 28. I did some research this morning. He participates in a revolution, in a coup
Oh, I didn't
to,
know that.
yeah. I mean, his father has an incredible biography that
Mm.
really, really deserves, its own podcast and miniseries. And his father is part of the original French Revolution, then serves under Napoleon. He and Napoleon have a falling out, and they're in Egypt. He leaves the army, goes to Naples, and when he gets in
Wow.
Naples, he's imprisoned for 2 years.
Wow.
And when he escapes, he's partially paralyzed, he's almost blind in one eye, and he had temporarily lost hearing in an ear.
My goodness.
And then he immediately has Dumas. There are two major ways that his father plays into this. Obviously, that. And then his father, there's a character in here, one of the three big villains, which is Villefort,
Hmm.
who's just trying to be a part of whatever political party is in power. At least that's how
Right.
I read it.
Hmm.
His father is a Bonapartist, and Villefort changes his last name, so he's not
Right.
associated with his father. Dumas' father is born into slavery. His father is a French nobleman. He's in Haiti, and his mother is an enslaved woman. And he comes to France at the age of 14. And when he gets married, he seems, we don't know exactly how this happens, he seems to introduce the name Dumas, and he drops
Yes.
his father's last name. It's always cool to find the little aspects of biography within fiction.
Hmm.
But Dumas, the author, participates in one of the many revolutions. His old employer becomes king, and so suddenly he's as good as you can kind of get it. And the year that this story finishes publishing, finishes in January, that year he builds his own country estate, and he names it the Palace of Monte Cristo.
Wow.
And this man loves to live luxuriously, and he loves the ladies, and he has to sell his home, this Palace of Monte Cristo, 2 years later because he
Mm.
can't afford it.
Not great financial stewardship.
So I love to imagine a little bit of Dumas in this remarkable character of Dante's. But I want to talk about revenge as this concept.
Sure.
Why did you latch on to revenge? You were talking about, wanting to
Yeah.
sort of show them. And what are some of those other, you mentioned Kill Bill. How did that sort of elsewise manifest in the content that you consumed as a kid?
Yeah, well, like to speak in like, there's always been something so fascinating about someone, I don't want to say fascinating, some satisfying,
Mm,
something so satisfying about a character, a person who has been treated badly, getting their lick back, so to
yeah.
speak, to
Yeah.
speak plainly. It just, there's something very juicy about that. And the more steps you take to get to the revenge, the more exciting it is, right? Just and I just want to like jump back a second, and
Yeah.
I want to say I'm using the term revenge very, very loosely. I know it's like I don't want people to assume that I'm like it's this mean force, right? It's simply for me rising above the circumstances and the people who have wronged you.
Yeah.
So obviously Edmond Dantes, Count of Monte Cristo really takes it to the extreme. The time, the plotting, but sort of rising beyond those circumstances is truly delicious. It's even quite biblical. It's even in a prayer,
Yes.
like you prepare a table in front of my enemies. It's like, yeah, watch me eat, right? There's
Yes.
something literally so delicious about getting what you deserve as the victim. And so when I look at content, or I look at literature or movies, films like Kill
Mm.
Bill, I always find them just so much more delicious. Another really great one is La Reina del Sur, which is a
Oh.
Mexican telenovela.
Oh, I don't know it.
Oh, it is fantastic. It's also serialized. There's like 60 episodes, and it
Yes.
takes us on this journey of this woman who is in love with this man. He's killed by these drug runners. She herself gets into a position of power and influence, is able to exact revenge. That one's also done over
Mm.
years. Huh, I should look into that. Any Monte Cristo,
Yeah. There
like,
just might be.
inspiration? But it's a beautiful book. And it's also like she's in Mexico, then she's in Morocco, then she's in Spain. Like, we're globetrotting and we're building this network of compadres and comrades and spies and people who can help her enact revenge and live well, right? And I think there's just something about doing better and feeling better and living better. And one of my favorite parts of this book, Dante's is this good looking kid. He's on a boat. He's about to get married. And then he gets, arrested and he's imprisoned. And as you mentioned, he meets up with this political prisoner who sort of digs the tunnel the wrong way and runs into Dantes, which is so, it has to happen just so, very soap opera, right? Just
Yes.
so. And the time he spends learning is truly some of the best parts of the book to me. The way they both speak about education and languages and science is also something incredibly satisfying to me. And learning well and living well is also part of that revenge strategy for him. And it's also that revenge strategy for me. And there's just nothing like, I sound so petty, there's nothing like, reintroducing yourself as a new person, not a broken person, not a bitter person, but a person who's risen above the circumstances that, an enemy has put them in. And I just find that's just so delicious and it's satisfying to watch and read and just absorb across all mediums, just
Yeah.
rising above those circumstances.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes from, not from this book, but from a TV show I watched a long time ago is success is the best revenge.
Totally.
And I think Dantes embodies that. The political prisoner that he is with is known to everyone in the prison as insane because he keeps saying, like, no, I know where this gigantic treasure trove is.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yeah, that sounds silly. And then Dantes gets to know this man and he's like, no, he is very sane and very lucid. So maybe this is real. And it is. And as soon as he gets all of this incredible wealth, I mean, the world is your oyster. Not to, there are
Yes.
pearls in the ha ha ha. But like, suddenly with that like money taken care of, everything is possible. And he
Yeah.
gives it away like it is nothing, which is
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Even to his enemies,
Yes.
which is wild. One of the three men who's a part of this plot simply because he's jealous. Eventually, tells the Count of Monte Cristo everything, and in return, he's also given a little bit of wealth. And I'm like, what are we doing? So there is a little bit of forgiveness in there in the plot, which I thought was quite lovely.
It's so interesting, this idea of forgiveness, because he, like you said, at the very beginning is about to get married. He is engaged to this woman, Mercedes. They are both basically very poor, and she is a Catalan, so she is Spanish, but living in France in this Spanish community within Marseille. And she is the daughter of a fisherman, and her job is to sew the nets back together for the fishermen. And they're about to get married, and he gets imprisoned falsely for supporting Napoleon coming back to power. And she waits 18 months. We don't learn this
Yeah.
until after these 14 years in prison. She waits 18 months, and then she marries the guy who has always been knocking at her door, who we know is also a part of this plot
Yes,
to
about the
imprison
plot.
him. And Dantes forgives her eventually. He explicitly says, no, I don't forgive any of the people involved, but I forgive her. When I read these books, not only am I, talking about the great themes and stuff, but I'm also like, if you were Mercedes, how long would you wait? She has
Right.
no contact with him. He might be dead for all she knows. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this one is so tricky. I think a part of me is still a little heartachy.
Yeah.
But it's like you're right. Like, how long is she supposed to wait? Especially during this time frame, she's living in abject poverty, and it's through marriage that she could potentially save not only herself but her family as well. She has an obligation as a beautiful young woman to marry, and the Count of Monte Cristo knew that, and that also aided in his forgiveness, as well as the fact that he was just always in love with her. I think at one point he was like, "I don't have a religion. Mercedes is my religion."
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, I
And
swear to her, not to God, to her.
exactly. And I think that's when he's imprisoned and he goes in when he's 19.
Yeah.
He's 19 and he gets out at 33. And what I didn't really sort of, connect this, but in how much they're talking about the importance of education and how it is the thing that keeps them going, really.
Yes.
Even if it's not like working towards an escape plan, it is something. It is something to do to measure your progress, to better yourself. And at the same time, we find this out later, at the same time, Mercedes is doing the same thing. She is learning and educating herself and trying to be better. And she marries this guy, Fernand, who is part of the plot, and he rises through the ranks of the military, and so she ends up being this real society woman. And from the first, she clocks it. She knows that that's Dante's just by his voice.
Yes.
And that not only is the final moments when the revenge is completed satisfying, every step of the way is also satisfying. There's a moment, you're saying biblically, there's a moment where they are all at his house in a dinner together.
Yes.
That scene is crazy. Yes. I'm doing the dishes and I'm holding my breath. Yeah.
It's so overwhelming. I also want to back up a little bit and say, when Dantes is in prison and he is, yet to have taken the name or even met the political prisoner next door, he is in solitary confinement for quite some time. And he is on the verge of going insane, truly mad. And when he hears the voice of Abbé, I don't know, how do you say that?
I think it's Abbé, yeah.
Okay.
I was still trying to read the book at that point. I'm giving up, but pretty soon.
It was like, it's happening. I'm losing my mind. And he's like, no, you're not. And this friendship that actually, kind of culminates into what Abbé calls a father-son relationship. He calls, Dantes, a gift from God, because he's in the priesthood and he didn't have children, is something quite beautiful. And I could imagine someone who is lacking of great male fathers. Obviously this is a very tumultuous time in France. A lot of father figures had perished or gone missing. I'm wondering how this sort of series in the book felt to people, this idea that this man was lucky enough to have an adopted father figure, someone who did teach him how to be a man and how to move around the world and how to be confident and how to stand and how to walk. Just thinking about it through that lens of this historic setting was also very moving as well.
Absolutely. And just another context thing, 2 years after this finishes publishing, Napoleon III comes into power. So this novel finishes publishing serialized, and again change happens again. It is a tumultuous 80 years. And just a fun bit of trivia, right? The narrative of the novel is 1815 to 1844, finishes around July. If this were a real person, Monte Cristo would walk off, into the sunset, and then the next month his life story would start publishing. The narrative catches up almost exactly with publication.
Wow.
It's really, and I also assume, like, as a reader, because he puts in, this thing happened politically, and he puts in little signposts to know what's happening. There's also got to be an element of, like, now it's last year, and now we're here. That's also, we talked about this so briefly before hopping on, but it doesn't feel like we have this kind of serialized momentum. I guess we did, but not like this.
Well, appointment television, right?
Exactly.
You have to watch, so you can go to work and talk about it, at the water cooler. That is such a 90s thing to say, but that's, ER and, all these great shows from the early aughts. I think now no one's really talking about television that way, except for White Lotus, but it's still not the same because it's only 8 episodes.
Exactly.
This, 60 chapters? Boom, boom, boom of revelation and drama and intrigue. And it is a slow roller coaster ride. Delicious, but slow.
Yeah.
To just crescendoing to the climax, right? I can't even imagine having something like that nowadays. I guess, if you're watching telenovelas, I don't know if they're still at that length of La Reina del Sur, where there's 60 plus episodes, but in the media that I consume, don't get anything like this.
Exactly. I think you really have to search it out. There's There's a really cool website called Webtoon. Do you know of this at all?
I've never heard of it.
I was in development like 4 or 5 years ago as a coordinator working in that, and they were like, "We need IP that's really, really cheap. Go find us like dirt cheap IP."
Makes sense.
So I found this website called Webtoon, which is any illustrator, any like
I'm gonna look this up.
it's kind of cool. Any graphic novelist that wants to can publish a story, and it's can be chapter by chapter. And they're like the numbers on this website are insane. Obviously, very big internationally. Exactly, there are so much stuff there.
Oh, people are reading this.
Exactly. It's
14 million, 16 million. Like this. Wow, I've never heard of this.
I know.
190 views,
Yeah.
190 million, excuse me. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know how I found it, but they've been hiring over the last couple months, and I keep being like, "You've got something here that I want to be. There's something going on here." But the only other thing I have to compare that to is like fan fiction in the aughts of like talking to my friends in middle school being like, some random user posted a new chapter, like, and there's something really cool about how grassroots that is, that this
Yeah.
was in everyone's newspaper. This was popular culture in the actual phrase of it. But I wondered, what did you remember from, I mean, all of these characters and storylines and made you want to revisit it, and then also what surprised you?
Yeah. This is fantastic. No, because now I'm really thinking. And I think I have some clarity on the revenge question because you asked me this.
Oh, yay!
So, a really big part of this book is the idea of transformation.
Absolutely.
We get this scrawny, young, ignorant, soon to be sea captain who knows nothing but the sea, his dad, and that he loves Mercedes. And through a series of horrible, unfortunate events, he turns into an incredibly wealthy, learned count, right? And I think there's just something so attractive about a makeover scene.
Yes, it
Which
is.
is essentially what this book is. It is a very beautiful, poetic work of transformation. This is the college English class version of going into the mall and trying on clothes.
Like taking off her glasses.
Right, taking off your glasses, you're spinning around, the music's going, and then all of a sudden you come out and it's like, who is this girl? But there's just something that is just so satisfying about this idea of this book being about transformation. And as someone who's like sort of being like, oh, this is who I want to be. I have to get there because then I'll show them. But I'm also going to show myself. We don't really get this in the book a lot. Every once in a while, the Count of Monte Cristo will do some self-reflection, but it's not very often. We get these singular focus on like these, outside circumstances, man against man, right? Man against nature. Very rarely is he being like, was that necessary? Until we get to the end of the book.
Right at the end.
Right at the end, it's like,
there's 30 minutes left in the book. Yeah.
why,
A 52-hour audiobook, and you're in the last 30 minutes.
I could have been on a Greek island my whole life. But I think there's just something to this idea of transformation that I love so much. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to revisit the book, that in my youth, thinking about myself, is that like, okay, like, oh, if only I were popular, things would be better. If people treated me better, or if I did my hair differently, or if only I could be on that sports team, or learn how to play the piano, I will become someone that is maybe like worth other people's time, right? Obviously, through time, education, you learn that, you have to look inward, which is again which is really funny. I'm like, damn, if you had looked inward in chapter 20,
A little therapy goes a long
little,
way.
little therapy goes a long way. But I do think, there's a part of me that even though I've moved past that, I'm really intrigued by these stories of people who are like, no, I'm going to change. I'm not going to do any interior work.
Yeah.
I'm just going to transform my outside. I'm going to put on the glasses. I'm going to cut my hair. I'm going to like roll up my skirt. I'm going to learn some languages, play the piano. And then I'm going to be able to step into the rooms where things can happen, things can make a difference. And so when I read this book, I'm sort of brought back to who I was, when I was 11, and then again when I was maybe 18, 19, 20, reading this book. Definitely took some time back then too. Um, where I was still maybe a little bit more desperate for exterior approval. Now my revenge is more about making a way out of no way. This is sort of woman against woman. We're struggling. We're making do, and we're proving my inner thoughts wrong. But definitely back in the day, I was like, man, I wish. Well, I don't want to be in prison, but if only I had an abbé who would give me the wealth and give me the knowledge and give me the secret to being able to step into any room and make things happen, which is sort of what happens for the Count. And it makes for a very sophisticated way of telling this story of revenge. I think transformation is just so much fun. And also, I'm a sucker for a tale about the sea.
Yes.
It's such a big theme in this book.
Yes. This man loves the sea.
He loves the sea, and even for the audience at home.
Yes.
And please cut this out if this is too much for the book.
No,
but
no.
People are probably wondering, like, well, how the hell does he get out of jail?
Oh my goodness.
Right? So, Abbé has a stroke. He's very ill. He's an elderly man. He tells the Count of Monte Cristo how to find his treasure. He passes away. The guards put him in a burial shroud. And Edmond Dantes, the Count of Monte Cristo, has this brilliant idea to remove that body out, put himself in, sew him back in. The guards take his body outside and 1, 2, 3, heave ho him into the sea, which is a stressful thing for me to read. And, he gets out, and you sort of, the next part of the phase of this revenge plan happens, gets the wealth, goes to Marseille, becomes learned and a wealthy man. But him returning to the sea in that way, I'm like, rebirth! Rebirth! He's being cleansed. Right?
It is so delicious.
He can start again.
Yes.
And it's so satisfying. So, and I keep saying that word, but truly,
it is.
The way this book is written, the way the story is told, there are iterations where you're just like, exactly, he makes it. He did it. And it just feels so good.
Yeah. It is this incredible blend of the conflict is still there. There's still propulsion, but every page is like, yes, yes, yes. So there's no, like, with a lot of books, you're like, it'll probably work out fine in the end. But the getting there is hard, and getting there is so fun here. He's not losing anyone week to week. And I want to drill down on that moment, because this also, to me, this book is very funny. So many times.
Say what?
I think this book is very funny sometimes. I mean, it's quippy, and this sequence is also harrowing. And maybe it's a sense of humor, I don't know. But he sews himself back into this bag. Again, like using a fish bone as a needle, very resourceful. And then it's essentially like, well, and the guards talking to each other, and they're like, we don't have a graveyard, so we'll just toss him into the sea. And he's in there being like, excuse me? He doesn't know that. And then they're like, oh, and time to tie the 30-pound weight to his foot. Bye. and so it's that little, like, by the way, and just continuing with it. And there's also just, like, people are snippy, and there's little backstabbing things. Just like, it's not only, like you said, there's so many, this club has everything. It has him, he returns to the sea, and instead of, when he's on there, he doesn't go by Count of Monte Cristo. He goes by Sinbad the Sailor.
Yeah,
madness. He is inserting himself into existing myth, into 1,000 Arabian Nights. It is so fun. All of it is so... There's poisoners. There's forbidden lovers meeting in a garden. That's one thing that was hysterical to me, just a little line of, like, this guy is, like, he's been a soldier and he wants to marry this woman who's promised to another, and he's like, I finally figured out the way that we can meet all the time, and it's not weird. I'm a gardener now. So we can meet in the garden, and it's not weird. It's those little moments that really got me. And there is, like, when he becomes Sinbad the Sailor, there's like a 9-year jump. There's a lot there that I want to know about. There's more adventure.
Wow, that's a fun way. Maybe we should put that on a webtoon.
Yes.
Like, do a little.
Well, speaking of fan fiction, This is the thing that really gave me whiplash. All of the plots are coming together. There's so many. He really spends 15 years pulling off these 3 revenges, and there's some little revenges mixed in. And this kid that he has, everyone thinking is a rich prince, is about to marry one of his enemy's daughters, and then the enemy's other daughter, or that daughter, is like to her best girlfriend, do you want to get out of here? Do you want to get out of here? And sorry folks, that's gay. It is not even me as a 21st century queer woman like trying to see it. They are lovers. They're like, and kiss me here, let's go.
Yes.
And I think it's not even clear, because in a very, again, satisfying, delicious way, Dumas lets the reader do a lot of guessing. Like, you're dropped into scenes and storylines without knowing who these people are. A mysterious man will walk in using a different name, and you're like, I think that's the Count of Monte Cristo right there.
Yes.
But I'm not sure. So there's a moment where, like, the other guy who's on the run at the same time is, like, trying to go to an inn, and he opens the wrong door, and there's, like, 2 women in bed together, and he's like, oh, sorry. And they don't say that it's these 2 women, but they're on the run at the same time in the same direction.
Yes.
That was the thing that gave me whiplash of, like, gay. Sorry. Gay. Excuse me.
Officer.
Gay. Gay.
In the room, just there. That's
gay.
So funny.
So I was like sitting right here last night listening to it, and there's one thing on fanfiction.com for those 2. It's out there. It's out there.
I love that. I love that.
And there's even a line where she dresses up as a man, of course, to be like,
yeah, of course,
I'm your husband or your brother or something. And there's one little throwaway line where it's like, and it felt more natural than her own normal clothing. And I was like, trans.
That's
something for everybody.
There's something there. There's something there.
Exactly. That is a webtoon of what they do on their own journey afterwards.
If this conversation happened in 2010 on Tumblr, we'd be Tumblr famous.
Oh my goodness.
Just saying.
You're absolutely right. And I just randomly remembered the final days that I was on Tumblr, 2015 or something. It was really waning out. But Hamilton was big. And there were people doing like drawings of like Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton kissing. And I was like, this is the end.
Yes.
This is the end for me, guys.
Yep, yes.
We've reached it. I'm done. We've gone too far.
I definitely saw some gifs. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
I'm out. This
application's getting weird.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I don't want to be in this room where it happened. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing that really struck me, and it comes out a lot more in the end, is how much this is about hope. It's even in like the final sentences about you can be in a dungeon. The way he gets revenge, like the guy who put him in prison ends up in prison starving, just like he was. Yeah. And he's in prison losing his mind, and he makes someone else, lose his mind, and all of these people die, and it's not even Edmond's fault. It's just someone else is a bad person. Villefort's second wife, who is 25, by the way, is poisoning everyone in the household for her 9-year-old child, meaning that she got pregnant at 14.
Yeah.
But so it's all about hope. Mm-hmm. I say on here, the best books are the ones that I run out of ways to talk about.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think hope is definitely a big theme, a big motif. And what's wonderful about this book is that I think as a reader, you're hoping too, especially upon your first read going in. For me, the big hope was that, Mercedes and the Count of Monte Cristo reunite. Spoiler alert, that's not what happens. But
we have to circle back to that, by the way.
We definitely ends
up.
Oh my God, please.
We need to circle back to that.
You cannot say goodbye without saying what happened there. But I do think it stretches this gorgeous hope muscle as a reader, where you're just like, I hope he's okay, and I hope the love is there, and I hope he forgives this person, and I hope he doesn't swallow the own poison that he's mixing. And I mean that not in a literal sense, but like this anger and frustration in this quest, like what's happening to him as a result of this work. And so I think hope is just such a brilliant point. And I think finishing the audiobook was I had to take a lot of deep breaths. I was like, well,
Yeah.
I'm so attached to this man and to all the other characters where I'm like, just give him a break. Give him a break, right?
Yeah.
Definitely inspired me to hope like that in my own life, actually, which was
Absolutely.
did not anticipate feeling that way again, and it's not something that I felt. I don't recall feeling as a young person reading this book, but I think now I'm just like, wow, a lot of bravery and a lot of hope in this book, and a lot of trusting that the next step is the right step, which is lovely.
Yeah. And that hope and bravery are intertwined.
Oh,
That
yes.
and like you were saying, you saying that you hope he's not poisoned by what he's doing. I think that's a big hope of like throughout as a reader, you were hoping that Dantes stays as the man that we know. And there's a lot of things that you don't know. There's a whole household where everyone is getting poisoned there, and I have,
Yes.
you have a theory on what's happening, but you're like, I really, really, really hope this is not my guy doing
Yeah.
this. There's a character who, in sort of a Romeo and Juliet way, fakes her death, and the Count helps her with it, and you have a theory that she's not dead, but she's dead for a while, and I had to
Right.
like go on Google and be like, does Valentine live? I need to
Yeah, I
know,
definitely, yeah.
you know? And so it's almost 200 years later and we are still in the grips of it without a doubt.
Yeah, I definitely had to Google that as well.
Yes.
I was like, just I can't wait any longer.
And that reveal that she's alive is really not until the last 10 minutes. He
Correct.
really, really draws that out. The final installment of this comes out in mid-January. So there were people at Christmas dinner being like, I hope Valentine
I
is
know.
alive. I'm really worried, you know?
I that is so funny. I never even thought about that. That is hilarious. Just getting the newspaper being like, did it happen? And it's like,
Now I'm imagining like because this there is so much within this to engage with anyone, like something that I was reading about Dumas is that not only was he this great writer, he was also really good at marketing. And I think that's totally true, and that there is something within this novel for everyone. And
yep.
so I can totally see like a little 10-year-old boy who started reading this when it was about the sea and pirates and stuff, and he's like reading it underneath the table at Christmas. like you know, I can just see that really clearly. And like mom scolding, but it's also got like almost Jane Austen, like Regency, gossiping in parlors and who's gonna marry the prince.
Yeah.
And the mistaken identity. There's a baby who's almost buried alive, but
Oh
he's
yeah, that
not.
to me. Yeah. Did not
And
like that.
but that comes back in an amazing way where they are in a courtroom sequence and the guy is like, I was that baby that you thought was dead. I'm your son. People have tried to make movies and miniseries of this, and I think unless you're like really willing to give it 7 seasons, I don't know that you can do this because it's
No.
just so much. Although I will say there's a version maybe from the 70s where Danglars is played by Tony Curtis, Jamie Lee Curtis's father. And I only watched the beginning of that, and he's in a really big wig. But I was like, oh, actually, that's delicious.
Every time you say something, I'm literally looking it up real time. I believe you. I just have to lay eyes on it myself.
That one is on Prime, and again, like I can't say how good it is, but there was a movie a couple years ago that was French, I think, and I don't think people liked it. But I just want to see my guys on screen, you know?
I
I
do.
love this novel and this world.
Yeah.
Oh my
Wow, there
goodness.
seems to be a mini starting from the Count of Monte Cristo 1912. There's a film.
I get it. I bet.
Wow. And then the latest one being 2024. Oh, the French that you said no one really liked. Because it wasn't long enough.
How I every once in a while for these when it's like a really classic a novel that people really do read in high school, I like to just be like, what are the discussion questions that
Right.
teachers might be asking? And so one was, you're turning this into a movie, you have 2 hours, you have to cut stuff. What do you cut? And I was like, no. Next question. We're not doing that. I
Yeah.
just don't think you can because it's all so good. It's not
Yeah.
that like the plot won't work, it's that you deserve to see it and to experience it.
All of it, all, and it's, and I don't know if something could exist like, I mean, obviously it could, but I don't know what the reception would be like, just because we're in a time right now where people are like, oh, we're in an age of second screens, so everything needs to be iterated out loud, and this not like you said, you're getting whiplash. You're like, who was that? What was that? What's going on? I don't know if we'd be able to get away with that in a film or a limited television series anymore. The film that I remember,
Yeah.
and I wonder if it's available. I didn't check before this podcast. Was the one from like 2001, 2002 with Jim Caviezel, who was also the guy who was Jesus in Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
I recall loving that, and I
Yeah.
think Jim, like I know the guy. Jim did a
Jim did a
really
great job.
he did a great job encompassing the innocence of this young person and then the desperation and loneliness and close to madness in the prison and then the stateliness of this person. Oh, he's like in threes. He's giving Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Oh, which
Oh,
reminded me of something else. So there are three dudes
yes.
that are responsible for the imprisonment of Dantes. They are the reason why he is in solitary confinement. He is accused of doing this thing he didn't do. And V4, who knows that it didn't happen, doesn't come to his defense because that would, incriminate his own father. So he's just like, whoop, she's quiet. I think it's interesting that we have these villains in three because Dumas is also famous for another book, which is The Three Musketeers.
Perfect. I hadn't made that connection yet. Absolutely.
And I just think it's so interesting that we have these three prominent villains who, for a time in the book, don't appear, but like, towards the end, they're there. We get to see them, and then we have this other book with heroes. And I thought that was interesting. As a kid, I was like, I wonder if anyone picked up on that. Like,
I
three
love
musketeers and
that.
these three bad guys. Which I don't know which one came first. I didn't do the research on that, but I always thought that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I like that it's not. I think often it's one protagonist, one antagonist, and it's
Yeah.
this one guy who just ruined everything. And I like that it's not. I like that is Danglars writes this anonymous letter, and he doesn't. He just throws it on the floor. I'm not going to
Yep.
send it. But he knows that Fernand, who is jealous of Edmond and Mercedes, who I did not like Fernand from the beginning, let's just say. Because he's hanging around Mercedes' house, being, I love you, I love you, I love you. She keeps saying, I love you like a brother. He's not listening to her.
Yes.
He picks up the letter and mails it, just like Danglars wanted. And what I loved about this is that Fernand obviously has this crime against Dantes, and then he keeps messing up. Or not messing up, committing moral crimes.
Yes.
So that
Moral
when
crimes.
he finally gets his just desserts in the end, he has earned it 10 times over.
Yeah.
He's been a deserter. He has been a traitor. He has done a lot of things more than just this one thing. And that's true for Danglars. That's true for Villefort, which I think is perfect and true, is that you get away with one little thing and you get rewarded for it. Like
Yeah.
he becomes. What's interesting is that he and the Count of Monte Cristo are both self-made men in very different ways. But there's something so satisfying in a self-made man. I mean, especially in the American culture. We love it.
Totally. We love it.
Yeah.
We love that. You just said something that blew my mind because I actually did not consider this. I do think this would be a different story if any of our three villains, if that was the only thing that they had done. Because then you'd be like, Count, no, they're different. They went to the priesthood. They're
Yeah.
rescuing puppies on the streets of Paris. But no, they are consistently morally bankrupt. So by the time that the Count of Monte Cristo exacts his revenge, you're just like, well, I mean, it is what it is, I suppose.
Not only did they make the choice in 1815 at the beginning of the story, they keep making those choices. Yeah. Whether it's on a really big scale where Villefort is this gigantic political figure who is using that power for misdeeds, he is also cheating on his wife, and he's also having, illicit children, and Danglars is just a banker abusing everyone, and everyone really deserves it. And I think there's a question at some point, someone says, like, why does God allow suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? And I think Dante sort of says, like, it comes around. Yes. You gotta keep hoping.
Yes, there is neither happiness nor unhappiness in this world. There is only the comparison of one state with another. Only a man who has felt ultimate despair is capable of feeling ultimate bliss.
There are so many good, just single lines to pull out. Mm-hmm. There's a line really early on when he's just gotten out of prison and he goes to his old boss to pay off his boss's debts. Mm-hmm. And the boss is in debt, and Monte Cristo in disguise is like, well, don't you have any friends who can help you out? And he's like, in business, you don't have friends, you just have creditors. And there's so many lines like that that are just like, you really spoke on a gigantic social truth right there. And now we got to keep going,
Absolutely. Trying to get this in, there wasn't a lot of time to like truly sit with them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one definitely stuck out to me. I was like, ooh.
I know.
That is the way of this capitalist society.
2 years ago, I'm a big Wizard of Oz fan. Everything Wizard of Oz. And I really love the Wicked books. Very different from the movie and the musical, of course. But in 2024, I was so pumped for the movie, and I loved the first one, that I took the book and I did the math, and I was like, great, I can read 2 pages every day and read each line and like really get everything he's putting down there and like read it like a Bible or something crazy. And I think that is something you could really, really do with this book. I've read 4 pages a day or something and let that sit with you and guide. There was a book I did on the show over a year ago that was, a high fantasy romance. And my guest is an author, and she said, this actually really shaped sort of my morality and how I look at politics and what is right and what isn't. And I think you can definitely see a lot of moral influences. I don't know about your own internal morality and sense of justice, but I think this can, at a young age, really inform that. It's a powerful text.
Oh, that's incredible. And I feel the exact same way about the Count of Monte Cristo. I finished the book, but I'm like, would it be crazy if I just re-listened to the audio? Just a little slower this time.
It hadn't occurred to me, but I'm going to. You're very right.
Take my time, not be like, oh, gotta get it in, gotta remember these things,
Yes.
But just really sit with these hot lines, because there's a lot. And just think about, the tumultuous times that this was written in, and our own very tumultuous times, and to sit with how things are changing quickly right before our eyes, and how people dealt with it. I think we have to circle back and talk about
yes, we do.
Ends up with at the end.
Yes, we do. I don't even know how is it pronounced in the book Ide? I think it starts with an H in the real book.
That's what he says in the audiobook.
Yeah. So she has a long, complicated backstory that is told a couple times, but she is described as Monte Cristo's slave. He did purchase her, and it's very clear, to me at least, this is how I read it, that it's more like a ward in that he is taking care of her, he's raising her, he's educating her, he's making sure she has everything. And then she plays a role in, the downfall of one of the enemies of Fernan. We find out that when he was in, I think it's Greece, he betrayed her father, and is the reason her father dies when she's very young in a very traumatizing way. And then in the very last chapter or something, she's like, I love you like a father and a brother and a husband. And those are 3 different kinds of loves. I don't know really what that means, but they sail off into the sunset together, presumably as lovers. Yeah, let's talk about that. Huh?
Well, I know I spent a lot of time talking about how much I love this book, but I'm not gonna lie, that was not fun for me.
There's always something. It can still be a great book, but that
Yeah.
really sucks. Yeah.
Yes. Because all those things, husband, brother, father, keeper, right? Which
Keeper.
makes sense. You just said, well, Fernand backstabs her father, who is Greek, and then he's the one who actually sells not only her, but her mother into slavery.
Yes.
Fernand is like the worst. And it's so funny because at the beginning he's just like, oh, I'm just this guy who loves Mercedes. And I'm like, wow, you're terrible actually.
Yeah.
And so again, yes, you're right. She's Monte Cristo's ward, and it seems as if this love is not a romantic love, but this is someone who's just going to accompany the count, so he's no longer lonely.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, in addition to your wealth, you also get a pet.
He might even call her that. Yeah. And she's kind of not allowed to go outside. We don't get a lot of information on that,
Right.
but she really only like comes out to go to the opera with him as some arm candy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all we know about her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not to get too psychological with it, but Dumas is the grandson of an enslaved person.
Oh, oh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is, I don't think I mentioned this earlier because it's just so vile and disgusting. So obviously his father, who's Thomas Alexander, is the product of rape. His mother is an enslaved woman and his father is a French nobleman. When Thomas Alexander is 14, his white father takes him to France with him.
Mm-hmm.
And in France, slavery is illegal. The second he lands on French soil, he is a free person. Grandfather doesn't take Thomas Alexander to France to free him. He wants an heir. He wants someone to carry the name and the legacy. And this is the disgusting part. Just before they leave for France, he sells Thomas Alexander's mother and sisters. And his father, again, is like, he is the first person of color in, like, Europe to earn all of these incredible titles. He is pivotal in the French Revolution. Dumas himself, as a mixed race man, faces prejudice. What's going on here?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I did not know a lot of that. I think in a lot of Southern tradition, specifically in the United States, there is the myth of the benevolent enslaver. And it was interesting to see that in this book a little bit, knowing that Dumas is a mixed race man. I wondered where that came from. And he's not too far removed from, in terms of like, oh, the one drop rule, right? Like he's
Yeah,
just a couple generations removed from his black relative. But in the way this played out, I was just like, why would you allow him to sail away with this person?
yeah.
Again, there's probably maybe some historical context that I'm missing, but for me, I'm steeped in this the history of chattel slavery in the United States.
Absolutely.
It definitely read as like, oh, he's a benevolent enslaver, and he has this ward, and he treats her very kindly. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's fantastic, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't be ignored.
It can't be ignored, and there's some parsing you can do to it if you want, in that she's Greek, but it also seems possibly Muslim or of Islamic descent. It's not clear. She is sort of a vague exotic beauty.
Exotic, yes, that's the word.
I do think she's sort of maybe the closest we get is like Greek, but she speaks all these languages, but that's mostly because he got that for her. Even in the best books, there's always like this one part, and and that's this one. You'd be amazed though how many, especially just in this podcast generally, for like young adult books for like kids and teens, not obviously the classics. The thing more than anything that doesn't age well in all of those books is fat shaming.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. First of all, I actually do not remember this in part with the ward at all. So actually, this is completely new to me. I'm like, is this new? I've never
Right.
heard of this. But of course, I was
Probably not in the Great Illustrated Classics version.
no, right, not in that. But I recall rereading a book called Nothing's Fair in fifth grade because I
Wow.
loved it when I was a kid. Again, another transformation motif. I'm obsessed with that stuff. But as I was reading it, I was like, they are so incredibly mean to this overweight child.
Yeah.
The jokes that adults make, that teachers make, that the narrator makes, that she makes about herself, it made it incredibly hard to read.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I cannot believe we were able to talk about humans this way, kids
Yes.
this way. But so I'm like, okay, that didn't age well for me.
Yeah, and it is so astonishing. I think honestly the most disgusting portrayal of fat phobia that I've seen, this is episode 105 of the show, is in Harriet the Spy, really early on. And what's weird is that you could take out that chapter entirely and nothing would change. It is
Really?
so weird. You know, Harriet has this nanny that she's very enmeshed
Yeah.
with and loves. And very early on, the nanny says, okay, we're going to go visit my mom. And her mom is overweight. The nanny has a lesson in there that's something like, you know, some people live in poverty. And that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But the way that that text talks about her is disgusting.
Wow.
So,
See, Aaron, I don't remember that either. That's madness.
and it's sad because that is an incredible text. But yeah, that
Yeah.
chapter is awful. Like Sideways Stories from Wayside School, which is
Yeah.
has one chapter that is just weirdly, there are like two kids named Eric and one is Fat Eric. Again, it's one chapter. But yeah, the one little thing here
Yeah.
is right there at the end. Why do you think that is the choice? And I'm forgetting a little bit. The satisfying thing to me as a reader, I think, would be him and Mercedes getting back together and they
Yeah.
reconcile. I don't really remember what happens to her. Her son goes off to like gain his honor, fight in a war, sort of be a soldier for a minute. What do you think is going on there with that choice?
I think this ending to me felt a little ambiguous. And, we talk about hope, but he's like going off into the sunset, and we don't really know what else happens to him, right? He's executed this plan, but that's kind of it. And for me, it kind of mirrors what happens to Mercedes as well, because with her own husband dying by suicide, she flees in shame. That is what happens to Mercedes. She leaves polite society in Paris. She's like, I cannot be here anymore. I've been embarrassed and I literally cannot show my face again anymore. So she just flees. And I think, in a world where you romanticize this a little bit, perhaps through that fleeing, she and the Count of Monte Cristo perhaps find their way back to each other because she's left the constraints of society and the watchful eye of right and wrong. And the Count of Monte Cristo has so much money, right and wrong doesn't apply to him, right?
I love that you
So
said that. Yeah.
so one would hope that they are together, but in my mind, I'm just like, oh, they kind of mirror. And I'm wondering now that his vengeance plan is complete, do we think he felt any shame? Is he also fleeing? Like, why didn't he stay?
Exactly.
Why is he starting a new life again?
Yeah. That was my sort of hanging over me the whole time. And I don't know. I'm trying to think like there's another piece of media that is doing exactly what you're talking about, but I can't think of it. But I think one of my favorite moments in any story, narratively, is when you get the thing that you've always wanted and it's not enough anymore. And that's usually like a midpoint. But I think we get a tiny bit of reckoning with him being like, oh, is this right? Did I do the right
Yeah.
thing? But I the whole time I was reading this, I was like, what is his life after this? When you finally get your revenge. And I think he is sort of saying like, well, I'm going to die now. I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
And then Ide is like, no, don't. And that's their little sunset moment.
Yeah.
But I think from a narrative perspective, this thing with Ide doesn't make sense to me. I think it's
Yeah.
either Mercedes or death. And I,
He should
and
have flung himself into the sea.
exactly. Or just be like
Which is
old
very
man on a
promising
boat.
young woman, actually. Maybe I don't want that.
Oh.
Right? I think that was a lot of people's gripe with that film, where it's like, why are you executing this revenge plan on behalf of your friend? And then we don't even get a satisfying end.
Yeah, that's
Perhaps him
true.
taking his life or not taking his life and just going on, and we don't know where. It's still nebulous, but we at least know that he's alive, right? Which I guess is somewhat satisfying. For me, could this man ever truly be happy without his father
He
and
loves his
without
dad so
Mercedes? He loves
much.
his dad so much. And remember when he came back and his dad didn't
Oh,
have any, his dad didn't have any wine? Aaron.
this is at the very beginning.
Oh.
Edmond has been at sea. This is literally like chapter 1, page 2. Edmond has been at sea. He's been, out doing his job. And he gave his dad, let's just say $60 from his last paycheck. And dad had to give away 50 to pay a debt. And it might have been Edmond's debt or something from gambling. So he has, let's say, $10 to live on.
Yeah.
For 3 months or something. So he comes home and he's like, you don't have bread, you don't have wine. And I'm just thinking now, foreshadowing, because ultimately there's no one there besides Mercedes who doesn't have, I mean, she's a woman. She doesn't have a way to support anyone. So his father, who's just referred to as old Dantes.
Yes, which I love. I was like, make it easy for me, please.
Exactly.
A lot of
Thank
names.
you. He's old. And so many characters have like 3 or 4 names. They've got a name and a title. But he starves to death. There's no one to care for him. He starves to death.
Yeah.
And there is and ultimately Danglars gets revenge by he's put in jail, and every time he asks for food, the jailer is like, okay, you can have it for $100, you can have it for $200, you can have it for $300. And so of course it gets to the point where he's starving like his father, but also no money in the world can buy you out of this position.
Yeah.
Which I think is so satisfying. But ultimately he can have his moment with Mercedes, he can get revenge on all of these guys. Nothing is bringing back his father.
Yeah. And I suppose, with this theme of with revenge, one has to ask is, was it all worth it? He could have just, living well is the best revenge, right? Best revenge is your paper, says Beyonce. And he has it. Why did he just go off?
Yeah.
Right? What did he waste his time? Dear reader, I say no. He
No.
didn't.
I think there's a few
don't
things
think
that
so.
maybe he did differently, could have, we've discussed them, but I think ultimately what's really nice is like he builds this, I'm a sucker for found family, and he has his own son figures. Maximilian Morel, who's the son of his old employer, and his girlfriend, and the son of Mercedes, who he's just like a bachelor having a good time in life.
Yeah. I love that. The theme of found family. I think that's so perfect, Aaron, because even in the staff that he employs, lots of wayward,
Yes, he's collecting people.
folks, smugglers and bandits from all over the world that are living and working with him, and who he's gained their trust. And there are things that he could not have possibly done without this network of people that he has met over a decade and some change. And I do think that's beautiful he started the story thinking the only person in the world who had his back was his father. And through a series of events, there are all these people who were like, that man I respect, that man I love, I will have your back, I will help you with this plan. Even if they didn't know exactly what he was doing, they were like, whatever you want, whatever you need. I thought that was beautiful.
And it's not that he buys friends, he does earn them. And sometimes it is through financial aid, but it's even, there's, because there's so many character names. I think he's Bertucci. He has one, employee who is also trying to get revenge on V4. So he's like, you know what? We'll wrap your revenge up in it. We're going to get you too.
Wow.
We're all coming on the revenge bus and we're going to make every stop. It's, I think he's a good guy.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. We're gonna wrap your revenge up too. Honestly, I would love to be the friend who has money, and anytime someone has an issue, they know they could come to me and be like, because there's certain problems you're just like, sure, money can't buy happiness, but it can solve this damn problem that's making your mental health go down the drain. What do you need? Rent, car note, school, new pair of shoes, right? You haven't eaten in a while? Throw money at it, throw money at it, throw money at it. And what a blessing to have a person who knows what it's like not to have anything be so free with their money, which I think is very interesting to have this kind of a character during the time that it was written.
Yeah.
Right? Because regardless of whether if you were a Bonapartist or a monarchist, you had enough political clout to be something, right? Which means you had a little bit of something, or you were wanting to be aligned with power, right? You didn't have to be concerned with survival, which I think is interesting to note about this book as well. And so I think the Count of Monte Cristo being this benevolent, wealthy person is also interesting.
There's a biography out there that I want to get my hands on that's about Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley, her daughter. Mary Wollstonecraft, who writes Declaration on the Rights of Women, and Mary Shelley, who writes Frankenstein. There's got to be a biography out there about Thomas Alexander Dumas and Alexander Dumas, because
There has to be.
Monte Cristo is this self-made man, and his father was a self-made man. He had some help technically from a horrific person. He goes into, I think, like the most bare bones military academy when he gets to France at 14. And rises to a general. Like he is the head of the army in the Alps. Achieves incredible status. And I don't know the exact wording of it, but I think part of why he falls out with Napoleon is that they're in Egypt and French people and French soldiers keep just claiming land for themselves.
Yeah.
And he takes issue with that. Yeah, I want to get my hands on a copy, and I want to read a little bit every day and just take that little page with me around through my day. It's an
There
incredible
is a
text.
Yes, there's a Pulitzer Prize winning biography of Alexandre Dumas
Oh,
called Black Count.
oh,
And I've always wanted to read it, and now I'm like, oh, I should probably make this a priority of
yeah.
mine.
We're both gonna do this
Okay,
right
homework.
after we log off.
See you right back here.
See you next time.
Because I've just been, just fascinated by this author, this playwright, and his life.
Yeah, and it started as a
Yeah,
playwright, absolutely. And I
yeah.
think there's something I think within that maybe that informs this book about the drama. I don't know. I was intimidated coming into this about the French history aspect, about like how much am I gonna need to know separately, and you can get by just fine.
Yeah, totally.
But it definitely enriches the story to know how uncertain things are, to know the backdrop, and to know the circumstances that this story was coming into the world in. Because 2 years after this story is done, we've got another Napoleon going on. And this book
Yeah.
starts with trying to get Napoleon the First back into power and a foiled plot. So it's this 200-year-old text, and yet it was so current when it was happening. And you said the relationship between the Abbé and Edmond when they're in prison is this father-son relationship. And there is something really interesting there about being in this 80-year period of absolute chaos and the idea of having a guiding hand
Yes.
over you is very, very interesting and must be powerful. And I think you compared it to this day and age, and absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd love a guiding hand, Erin.
We need
Yeah.
one. We need one. And
Yeah, so strangely enough, I could definitely see while this book is very dramatic and juicy, I could see how it could also bring a lot of comfort to people
oh
within
yeah.
certain aspects of interpersonal relationships.
And I can definitely see there's definitely something about if you want to get a little heavy-handed with it, which I always love to do, of you're trapped in the prison of adolescence and you have no control, and you are able to leave, get out, graduate, go on your own, and be this person that you have dreamt of all
Yes.
those years and take on this identity. That
Oh,
absolutely makes sense as
now
something to
that's what
appeal
I
to.
love. Hmm.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that's the end of my notes. That feels like a really good place to wrap up.
I
It
love
is.
it.
It's getting to be a little late where you are. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on that we haven't gotten to?
I just wanted to say that I think that while all the three main guys that are bad, I'm stressed now. For
No,
me,
that's okay. Don't be stressed.
for me, before I think is particularly bad
Yeah.
because he has no loyalty. It reminds me of those signs where people are just like, pick a side, ho. Like if you don't, what are we doing? He could go either way.
Yeah.
And there's something incredibly dangerous about a person who has not chosen a side, because any day, he could be your enemy. And unfortunately for Dantes, that is exactly what happened here, because he didn't prioritize morals, he didn't prioritize political correctness, he prioritized power. And that's what made him incredibly dangerous and what eventually sealed his fate. So I just wanted to bring that up. And if you are surrounded by people who are both sidesers or cannot pick a side, I would ask them a lot of questions until you get to the bottom of it, because they could potentially be the person who put your ass in danger.
Yeah, that really, because V4 is on Dantes's side until he sees how he
Correct.
could be endangered by it.
100%.
And that feels like it's early on in the book, but that feels to me like that's the moment the story kicks into gear, where
Yeah.
you're given a little bit of hope and it's taken away.
That's your first heartbreak, truly.
That is your
You're like,
first
oh,
heartbreak.
the story's about to wrap up quick.
Exactly. Okay, we're gonna be good.
Yeah. I'm
Absolutely.
about to get married. You're about to get married. This is taking up all of our time. Like, let's just clear this up. And he's like, oh, actually, just kidding.
And the crazy thing is that Dantes and Mercedes are having their engagement dinner. They're having their dinner
Yes.
where we're about to go get married right after this. And V4 is across town having the same
Exactly.
dinner.
Exactly.
Is that with Renee, the wife who dies like immediately? That's Valentine's mom.
No. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, you're losing me.
we'll
I'm
never know.
sorry, I don't
We'll
know.
never know. It doesn't really matter. It's fine.
We will know, because we're going to listen to it slowly again and get these
We
names.
are. There are going to be so many. We're going to be like Catarous, getting these great hazelnut-sized diamonds from this text and just putting them in our pocket, and we won't be killing anyone.
The
like
people are
he
going to be
does.
sick of us. They're like, oh, like Dumont says in The Count of Monte Cristo.
Exactly. In business, there are no friends, only correspondents. So I think that it feels like a good time to get to our final question.
Yeah.
Would you consider this required reading?
Absolutely. I wouldn't read it when you're 11 like I did. I would wait till you're a little bit older, but I think this has incredible themes of transformation, forgiveness, hope, bravery, all the things that we discussed. And if you take your time with it, I think this book can really move you.
Absolutely. It's required reading for me. No matter who you are, you're going to get a kick out of it. You're going to love it.
Right? This club has everything.
This club has everything. So with that, is there anything you would like to plug where people can find you?
Totally. You can find me across social media at Tocarra Elise. If you're interested in my Kidlit recaps, you can find me at Takara's Library for the month of February. I'm recapping a book every single day that features a Black protagonist and a Black author and or illustrator. I'm tired, but I'm having a great time doing it. And if you are so inclined, please check out the Getty Museum's podcast, If Objects Could Talk. I'm a writer on that narrative podcast. I'm having a blast. Season 2 will come out at the end of 2026. I'm writing away on that, and I hope you guys enjoy both of those seasons.
Oh my goodness. You posted a video maybe yesterday or the day before that was a children, one of the books for Black History Month, that was about a boy who turned 7 and it's finally his time to pray 5 times a day. I
Salat and
cried.
Secret.
I cried watching your recap. I cried. That was so beautiful.
It's a beautiful, beautiful book. I cannot recommend it enough. And the author, Jamila, is wonderful, and all of her children's books are just so thoughtful. I think children's book authors are so gifted at utilizing text, and she's special for sure. So yeah, Salat and Secret. It's a beautiful book.
That's a beautiful book. Well, it took me like 100 episodes to figure out how to do this, but I figured out how to end the podcast, and it is by reading the last paragraph-ish of the text. So here we go.
Yes.
Darling, replied Valentine, has not the Count just told us that all human wisdom is summed up in 2 words? Wait and hope. The end.